Welcome to Coaching to Flourish Live, where we're going to tackle all of your coaching questions every Tuesday right here on Facebook Live. My name's Britt, and I'm your guest host because Raj is out today. And I am joined by John Andrew Williams, president and founder of Coach Training EDU. Nearly everyone has a big goal that they want to achieve, something would change their life for the better, take them to a new level of personal development, or simply just add to their life's goals. So like writing a novel, starting a business, getting a PhD. But tackling big goals can feel really daunting, which is why coaching is designed to sort of help clients break down their goals into more manageable pieces. So today, I thought we could explore the benefits of big picture goal setting, why it's important to break these goals down into something more manageable, and how doing something as simple as putting your phone in the bathroom at night can help you write a novel. So, are we ready to dig into the topic?
Let's do it. Thank
Awesome.
you. That was excellent.
Nice. Came prepared today. This is funny because this actually comes from a class I was teaching recently. And I was telling a story about a client who was struggling with her morning routine. So we ended up diving into, the world of systems where we sort of discovered things that were working for her, things that weren't working for her. And we decided ultimately she decided, I should say, to make a few small changes, such as using her a phone as an alarm and putting it in her bathroom at night, which would force her to get out of bed in the morning. And then she also added the challenge of putting some like math problems on her phone. So she had to do some math problems to turn off the alarm, really to get her brain going. So I shared this example to highlight the importance of systems and how setting yourself up for success the day before or hours before, whatever, can really, have some strong benefit. And one of the coaches in my class said that while they understood my example, they really found it difficult to relate to their clients because in this particular coach's words, their clients had bigger goals than just waking up on time in the morning. And it got me sort of thinking about how overlooked the small things are when it comes to achieving big goals, because really my client who had come to me was trying to write a novel. And one of the pieces of that was building routine for writing regularly. So I thought we'd start with your thoughts on sort of the difference between big overarching goals and setting those up, and then also how to set up some smaller goals for small wins along the way.
Well, thanks, Brian. That's fun. Let's do it. So I like thinking when there's a project, thinking like this in terms of chess. It's just a lovely metaphor for what, let's say there's a big goal and the goal is to win the game. And it's helpful to break it down into two different aspects. One is strategy, the other is tactics. And when there's a big goal, something really important to accomplish, I think there's a lot of confusion around what is a strategy and what is a tactic and what is a plan and what do I do next? And essentially we are a one machine problem. We are one machine and we can do all of these tasks, but then how do you prioritize which task to do and when, and what impact does that task have on another task? And so here we are, basically one machine computer faced with a sea of choices. And then on top of that, you have to also get, okay, so what's the difference between a strategy and a tactic and a plan? And then we have to figure out what's happening in the external world that's also moving at the same time that I'm moving. These are big questions, and getting the geography in is a really great first step. So that's where it starts.
Okay.
Ready to dive in? I want to dive.
I'm excited. It's because you're introducing all these extra things too that a lot of people don't think about. So we're talking about big goals, small goals, but then strategies, tactics, planning for that. And it sort of blends nicely with hope theory a little bit, right? And how we sort of plan for things. So yeah, let's dive in. How would you define the differences between these things that you're sort of introducing?
Right. So a strategy is the thesis you're using to compete against a force that you cannot control. So a strategy is something that involves an opponent, and sometimes the opponent doesn't need to be a person. It could also be an idea or a necessity. Like let's say a financial opponent, like you need to make a certain number each month, right? Let's say you're entrepreneuring or freelancing or whatever. That's so like making that number can be the opponent. Okay, cool. So what's the strategy? Is it you're going to get a full-time job and then work a part-time freelance, or you're going to try to freelance and then supplement with a part-time job? How are you interacting with an opposing force and, arraying your resources based on a coherent idea? That's a strategy. And a lot of people, when they start going into entrepreneurship, they're thinking more like, the planning route, which is more of how can I spend the money, or how can I spend my resources to get a website, to do, the marketing, to do the sales. It's more around time management. And that's what planning is. It's how are you spending your resources? And separating those two things out. Like, so having a coherent strategy delineated, and then also enables you to plan better, which enables you to develop tactics, which the person who puts the phone in the other room and has to do math problems, that's a tactic.
Mhm.
That's a habit. That's a cool move on the board that you can employ almost like shorthand to achieve the larger strategic vision, or to plan better. So having certain planning systems could be tactics that help you achieve the strategy.
Mm. Yeah, I can see how there's a lot of complexity yet simplicity to it as well.
Totally. I have a strategy. So just to make it really
Yeah,
clear,
yeah.
like how this works, like in real world.
I was gonna say.
So I love plants. I love watering plants. I got this garden. We recently put in grapes, and we have the perfect hillside for it. And I had to research grapes, put in, the whole, grapes, the irrigation, the poles, the whole thing, while still doing all the other things. So I have a strategy. And my strategy, I call it Bumblebee. And the idea is you go from place in your yard to place in your yard, and whatever you see needs to be watered or taken care of or built so that the plants don't die. That's the next place. Like, that's the next flower. But you have to be a bumblebee. You can't just stay there and let everything else neglect. So you have to do a round, and allow yourself to do that round when that little sneaky thing says, hey, maybe you should check on that 3-year-old over there. It's been a little too long since they're a little too quiet. So it's okay to bumblebee. So the strategy isn't like, I'm not moving this thing to completion. I'm just moving it one step forward. And so the strategy is, so the coherent idea is, if I go from jump from place to place as a bumblebee, can I cover all the bases? And you just allow yourself. So there's no plan. I have lists. I'll go through I'll go through my list and cross stuff off. Sure, but it's you know what I mean. It's like the strategy is one step,
Mm.
and not I'm just going to totally focus in this area, get it completely done, then go someplace else, get that completely done. My life can't work like that. So we'll call that the opposite, maybe focus strategy.
Okay.
Once you have your strategy, then you can start to form your tactics and really execute a plan.
Okay. So there's different types of strategies, is what you're saying.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So when you're
Yeah.
working with a client, let's say you have, especially early on in a process, I notice sometimes with my clients that they sort of start to hyperfixate on the daunting, looming nature of the bigger goal. Um, what's the best way, would you say, using some of these strategies, tactics, plans to help sort of redirect them away from, oh my gosh, this is so scary. How am I ever going to do all of the things I need to do to get to this big goal? And have them focus on something that's more achievable.
They have to define their strategy, like creating an actual name for the strategy that you're employing to achieve that goal takes your attention off of the dream, what if, this is out there in, Neverland. It's no, it's this strategy. Can it work? Does this strategy have a logic to it? Does it feel like it works? And if you have a strategy that feels like it works, now we're back in hope theory, because you then go into, yeah, I think my actions are going to be useful. And If that's not the case, some people have an internal monologue. My actions will not be useful. You can feel it. Like you can feel viscerally the difference between those two different internal statements. Having a coherent strategy allows you to say, yeah, I think that this is where I'm going, and this is why, and this is how. But it's against an opponent, so it's a thesis. It's not a it might even be too strong, but it's a thesis. So you're continually changing it, you're testing it, and so it gets you out of this mode of, oh my goodness, that goal is so huge, so big. It really, if you take on the goal, I want to transform education. That feels super heavy. What does that even going to look like? But then when you start thinking, okay, what would my strategy really be to have life coaching concepts infiltrate education? Like to be almost the center of education, what would really like that path look like? And then if the strategy is, okay, I need to demonstrate it myself, show others how to do it, show that this is business, financially viable, show that it does have a huge positive impact on students, and then a school's going to do it, and then a state's going to do it, and then a nation is going to do it, and then it will be the future of education.
Mhm.
That's the strategy. And so the huge goal then becomes a series of strategic milestones.
Right. That makes a lot of sense because what you got me thinking about is it's sort of bringing in a little bit of growth mindset and fixed mindset in the sense that when people if everyone had the mindset of the coach that was in class today, and I don't think that this particular coach's mindset was this at all. It just got me thinking, if other people's mindsets were, oh, I have this big goal. I don't have time to be spending on experimenting with my morning routine. I need to write. I need to get to the novel. So I don't have time to be fixing this and I don't have time to be fixing this. It's sort of they miss that those milestones are the ladder rungs that get you to the top. Without them, you just kind of got the two poles, but you're gonna just kind of be shimmying and sliding all
hmm
over the place, right?
So let's do the exercise. So what would you call that strategy? The strategy is I don't have time for anything else. Like what would the name, like what would the positive intent name of that strategy be?
Mm, I guess I would, if it were me, I would just call it like eyes on the prize.
Right. Like nothing else matters.
Nothing else, just right, 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 right.
Right. So let's call that the strategy. What does that strategy lead to? Like what's the logical conclusion of that strategy?
I guess that it would depend, right?
Right.
If
Yeah, there we
I just
go.
write,
Right,
that's
right.
great. But if I don't have any routine, if I don't have a strategy around my writing, if I don't have structure around that writing, like, is the writing good? How am I getting feedback? Am I taking care of myself? So it ignores everything. It ignores the supports.
Right, right. So this is exactly the next step in strategy planning, looking at strategy, like pegging it down so you can get to a plan. If this strategy is true, then what are the other ideas that also have to be true? And that's where things get interesting.
Yeah, I love that because you're right. In that sense, if all I have to do is write, then I would have to have an environment set up that enables me to do that. I'd have to have a routine set up that enables me to do
Mhm.
that. So if if is the only thing that matters, if that's true, I would have to do a lot of things before that to set myself up for the success of getting to the
Right. Mhm. That's the idea.
okay.
That's the idea. And so it can even be that let's say the person wants to write. Like that's the strategy is just write. What happens if you do that for 3 days? Do a writing sprint for the purpose of, uh, trying to see how far you can get in 3 days, for the purpose of seeing what else breaks around your life. Be,
Hmm.
oh wow, like I need a system for my clothes because this is getting. If I just write, that's going to get out of control.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, there's a lot of things that people would neglect if they didn't have everything else built around it.
And then it can be like, well, what if? Like, what if you develop that iron discipline of just writing for 8 hours a day? What is that like? That's where you can start to get into, testing strategies out. And if there's a way that you can test a strategy, that's the good stuff. And then you develop tactics that support strategies. I have guidelines, like when I do the bumblebee around the house, if, it's so wild. Like, I feel like I could almost make a flow chart of my lawn care decision-making process. Like, I might go that direction. So like, I'm going to be, it'll be interesting to see, like, as an older person, how systemized this stuff gets, because I've been deep into irrigation lately, thinking to myself, my goal is to set everything up on automatic, the whole thing, like to minimize my actual human input into this anymore and see what happens. I am 80% of the way there. And I think, anyway, so as a metaphor, right? Can you upstream? Can you set up the irrigation? Can you put the work in that is, the work now that will have a continual drip benefit in the future? So your job is to go around and just to check on the systems and make sure these systems work.
Right. And so going back to that original example from the beginning of someone putting their phone in the bathroom, like that's just one tiny step,
Mm-hmm.
that's one of the places that the bumblebee goes, um, you know, in the grand scheme of the rest of their day that they need to set up for success. So
Right.
what you just said kind of got me thinking about, um, you know, one of the biggest challenges that I feel like I see with my clients and we talk about in classes is that because no two clients are alike, even if two clients have the same goal, the way they each get there might look different. Like so for example, like in my world, one client might break down their goal of writing a novel into I want to write a chapter every week for 24 weeks until they have all 24 chapters and they complete their novel. Whereas another client might want to break the same goal in terms of acts, act 1, act 2, act 3, each
Mm-hmm.
act consisting of 8 chapters, and they want to do that in 3 weeks to a week. Right? And so that's a much larger milestone than the other person. So I guess my question here is, as a coach, how can we help our clients determine whether or not the size of these strategies, tactics, plans are suitable, and then sort of set them up for the success piece, the small wins that they would need? Is that part of the experimentation process? Or is
Mm-hmm.
there other strategies that as coaches we can be implementing to help our clients see success faster? Or maybe not, maybe faster is the wrong word, just see success more efficiently.
No, it's an interesting question. Uh, all right. My mind goes to 3 different directions. The first is, I don't know if that's the right question to ask.
Hmm.
Is the goal too big? Or is this milestone too big for the is this goal too big to accomplish? Because big goal size, like really big goal size, in the hands of a well-trained coach can be an amazing learning experience. And where a coach would go is to use the big goal as a launching pad for questions about what do you feel like is your life's work? When you're doing something, when do you know that you were born to do this? What does that look like for you? When you're looking back on your legacy, what are the 3 biggest important aspects of that legacy? Like, you can go into these questions when someone has a really big goal. Like, what does fame and money mean to you? What does it mean to your goal? How do you, when you wake up in the morning, what's the first honest emotion that comes to mind, and where does it come from? Like, you can go this intimate, this deep with a really big goal and start to unpack stuff that people might not even in their whole entire lives have a chance to even put into words and verbalize, let alone have someone listen to that and respond to it. So in the hands of an experienced coach, big goals are like, num, num, num. Like, bring them on. The bigger, the better. The more, you can't even, you want to go not just to Mars, but to, like one of the moons of like, Io, you want to check out Jupiter, that kind of stuff. yeah, let's try to get to Jupiter, with a human. You get there and it just brings up so much stuff that excellent, brilliant, right? Thought two is when you're exploring a strategy like this, a large mission, and you can start to break it down into strategies. Okay, so what would the strategy be? You still then put yourself on that empowerment path, because what strategies do is it's not it's like, yeah, this is how to do it for sure. Like, this is how I'm gonna try it out, but it's a thesis. It's an experiment. It's a, let's try this. I think this is working. And the third thing is, and this is like, this is the thing that I've been playing with a lot recently too, is I think there is a body of work that is really useful to know. And there is a useful knowledge basis out there, because coaching goes so far. The other 2 points go so far in the empowerment basis that a coach would almost completely ignore whatever knowledge they had. I do think there is a place for a knowledge basis in coaching, and I've been really wrestling with where that fits.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
think where it fits is empowering your client to find it. However, if you do as a coach have a pretty serious knowledge basis on how like the different fields, or this is how this thing just works, how can you share that in coaching sessions in a way that still goes back to empowerment? We talk about this. We have a lot of ideas on this, but on a more systematic level,
Mm.
what's that balance between empowerment and knowledge basis?
Yeah, I think what you're saying, like, brings up for me too, sometimes, one of the bigger questions I get asked, especially in my academic classes, is, we have students who come to us and they have these giant things that they want to accomplish. And I'm not saying that they can't accomplish them. It's just that in the time frame they want, or in, given all of their other the things that they have going on, they're really putting themselves in a situation where it would be a really big challenge. And the question comes up is, I want to empower my students, or my clients in this case, but I also want to set them up for success. And if I know that what they're looking for, if I know, maybe this is where this conversation goes, is if I know from a knowledge basis that what they're trying to accomplish is maybe not impossible, but highly, highly unlikely. Again, not ever, but just in the time frame or given
Right.
their circumstances. How do I make sure that I'm setting them up for success, but still empowering them, and not basically coming out and being like, that's not. So what's the balance?
Yeah, I've been playing with that ideas too. I mean, I think it's also to designing what kind of relationship you want to have with success and failure.
Mm,
And let's say someone does experience success quite early. Like they have a strategy, they employ a strategy, they get lucky, and then they achieve success. And then they think, okay, cool. Like this is how this is going to operate. And then they move further down the line, but they never really learn to develop a work ethic around testing stuff out.
mm.
Or, sometimes I check in on the Bumblebee method and say, is there anything is there anything that's not working? Like, there's a great feedback loop, that there's some, you know, these plants are not making it. So you gotta adjust, right? Uh, yeah, I mean, you start to get these things where you realize you want to test these strategies. And so if you get early success and don't learn to test strategies, later on when the stakes get higher, you might not know to put, you might not have enough of a knowledge base or work ethic, or you just got lucky that first time. So, it's helpful to have a mindful relationship to success and failure, and actually to seek out both success and failure. Like you have to actively seek out failure in order to
Yeah.
become long-term successful. And I know in the business world, some people say, oh, failure is overrated, failure is underrated. Like we each have our own relationship to it. Working with a coach can help you define and find your most empowering one. The one for me is, yeah, I have to actively seek it out. I have to breathe into it, especially the hard failures where it feels ouch. But you take those
Mhm.
hard failures and then you use them as, so I have this 4D cycle that I've been playing with, and I know we got to stop here. But the 4D cycle is, uh, first is disappointment. Right? You feel the disappointment. Second is doom. You allow yourself to go a little further and just feel that doom and gloom. Third, and this is where I feel like is the most important step, is the shift between doom and determination.
Mm.
And you feel it. You know, each one of us has that bridge between feeling the doom and gloom, and then you know what? I I got this. Like there's that inner that you got to find that, love that part, nurture that
I
part,
love
and then the last part. And this is the last, second most important step is going from determination to actually doing something.
mm.
You got to do something. It's not just enough to think your way to it's an action step. So I call it the 4D cycle.
I like that. I
Disappointment,
like that a
doom,
lot.
determination, do.
I think that's a great thing. It reminds me of a quote I heard recently. Maybe we can sort of end on this, which is um, when you take, I can't remember exactly, but it says something to the effect of like, when you take risks, you win either way. If you are successful with the risk, you become happier, you become more confident, you become more, your self esteem grows. If you fail at the risk, you gain wisdom, you gain knowledge, you gain experience. And so there really is no losing in these taking risks or looking to achieve these goals. And I think that kind of blends nicely with that 4D cycle of like, I took a risk and it didn't work out, but now I'm determined to keep going and I'm going to do something about it to continue, that upward spiral. And that's a really cool way to look at it.
That's it.
Awesome.
You can't underestimate doom either. You could allow yourself to sit in the doom. That's part of it. And then I can get into it. Because it's a tactic, right? It's all like, how do you get into the doom effectively? How do you get out of doom effectively? It's a tactic. What's your tool to get from doom to determination? Usually it involves some sort of empathetic motivation.
I love this. Let's add this to the agenda for
Have fun.
next
Have
time.
fun. I know we got to stop.
Well, thank you all for coming today. This was so fun. Check back next week. We'll be doing it again. I think Raj will be back next week. So we will see you all next week. Thanks for being here.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.